Just a heads up, folks. This episode is going to start dark before it gets better. Hey,
poor! Hey, poor! Hey, poor! You don't have to be poor anymore! Jesus is here!
The loudspeaker spoke up and said, Christianity is stupid.
Okay, I am going to skip the usual opening intro for reasons I think you can all understand. I want to thank all of you who reached out to me in the wake of Button's death. I really appreciate all your comments. The absolute hardest part of this has been watching Fuzznuts go around the house calling for Buttons and being upset that she doesn't respond. He gets a particular expression on his face when he's confused, and the other day he got on something so that he would be eye level with me, and just kept meowing at me in a plaintive voice with that expression. I pretty much lost it, as you can imagine, because I know he was trying to tell me he missed his girlfriend and wanted her back. And, you know, I have no way of telling him she can't come back. And you will forgive me for being a little disjointed on this episode. Fuzznuts, in addition to looking for Buttons when I'm in certain spots, one of which happens to be Button's favorite spot, namely in front of the computer, Fuzznuts will incessantly demand my attention. I don't know if he's lonely and wanting the attention for that reason, or if he's thinking if he's affectionate to me, I'll give him his girlfriend back. You just never know. And so he's rubbing all over me, and he'll be banging into the mic, and there's nothing I can do about it, and I can't edit it out because it's there's just no way. It'll take me 14 hours to record this episode. If I stopped and re-spoke and then, you know, and then edited it out all the ka-thunks from his tail, I apologize, but I you know, you can understand, I'm sure. And he, you know, he does spend all his time curled up in Button's favorite spot, which is, you know, in front of the computer. Now, as to what happened to Buttons, here's the details. I was getting ready for work on Sunday night, and as always, because I was up moving around, Buttons saw this as being playtime. She was sitting on my bed and batting at my fingers with her paws. I turned to get something out of the bathroom, and out of the corner of my eye, I could see her moving to follow me. Which, you know, anytime I would get up or walk around, she would tend to follow me around. I heard a thumping sound like she had stumbled out of the bed. I turned around thinking I'd have a bit of a laugh at her clumsiness, and she was standing up looking a little confused. She made a few odd noises, and I spoke to her thinking that perhaps she was having a seizure and that this might snap her out of it. Then she did a rapid crab walk to her left for a few feet before falling over on her left side. As soon as she fell over, I knew she was probably dead. I went up to her and touched her to see if she was still with me, but she wasn't. I'm almost certain that she died before she hit the ground. I stared at her thinking what to do next. It was 10 o'clock at night. I needed to be at work soon, and I couldn't exactly bury her at that time of the night. Hard to find my shovel in the shed that doesn't have any interior lights, let alone dig a hole. So I closed the door to my bedroom since Fuzznuts was somewhere else in the house. And when I got home from work the next morning, a part of me was hoping that I was wrong and she'd only had a really bad seizure and I'd find her mad at me that she'd been locked in my room all night. Unfortunately, she was in the same spot she'd been in when I left, so I knew that she died when I thought she did. I buried her in the yard and then promptly spent the rest of the day in bed, curled up in the fetal position. When I got up to go to work that night, it was pouring down rain, just an immense amount coming down out of the sky. Normally, I wouldn't let such an amount of rainfall stop me from going to work, but with Buttons just having died, I was in no shape to do it, so I called out. Tuesday morning, I called the vet's office to get Fuzznuts checked out and to see if they might have any ideas as to what killed Buttons. I talked to 2 different vets in the office who, between them, probably have over 50 years' experience, and neither of them had a good idea. Both of them have said that in a cat as young as Buttons, she was only about 13 months old and died almost a year to the day after I had rescued her. It was basically unheard of for them to die in such a manner. If she were older, there were any number of possibilities, but in being so young, it made it harder to guess. The best that they could come up with was that she had a blood clot, as some cats are prone to them, and that was what killed her, either by causing a massive stroke or a heart attack. But even then, they were hesitant to say that this was likely to be definitive. I had thought about saving her body so they could do a necropsy on her, but I figured that it was more important to use my money to pay for any treatments that Fuzznuts might need. That turned out to be a wise decision. Fuzznuts, they found, was running a high fever, 105 degrees. That's about 40 Celsius for you folks in the civilized world. They ran some tests, and it looked like he was fighting off an infection. They told me they wanted to give him some antibiotics and something to get his temperature down. They also needed to keep him overnight for observation. Naturally, I agreed. A couple of hours later, they called me to say that his temperature had started dropping, so it looked like the antibiotics were doing their job, and that it wasn't something viral. The next morning, the vet's office called, said that his condition was improving, but they were going to run some more tests to rule out FIV and FLV. Even though I was certain that the test would come out negative, I agreed because I didn't want to take the chance that I was wrong. They did turn out negative, which was good, because if he'd been positive for either of those things, it would mean that he probably didn't have long to live. He might have been able to beat this illness, but the next one would come soon, and he might not be so lucky then. Still, I couldn't take Fuzznuts home with me. They wanted to keep him another night. Naturally, I agreed. I mean, I'm not going to take any chances with my co-host here, if I can help it. So, the next morning, they call me and they say he's doing much better and that I can come get him and take him home. I race right on over there, and I get there faster than they expect. The vet didn't realize how close I lived. And according to them, they think that he picked up something from the feral cats that I had in the house, either from Duracell or Leela. They're not sure, of course, but that's the only possibility. Neither of them seem to have anything like what he did, so I guess they got it and got over it or something. I don't know. Their because they're outdoor cats, their immune system is going to be hardier than somebody who refuses to go outside like him. But the vet bill wasn't cheap, but it was surprisingly less than what I had expected. I thought I would be shelling out, have to shell out like $1,000 for him, and I would be on here begging for money to help cover the costs. But it was just under $500 to get him taken care of. And fortunately, because I'd worked overtime the previous week, I didn't have to worry. I had the money in my account. I mean, who needs a car anyways when you got to save your co-host, right? Now, when a friend of mine saw my post on Facebook that Buttons had died, she sent me a message. And she says, you know, my cat had kittens not too long ago. Would you like one? And I was like, no, I don't really know. It's kind of the wrong time for me to think about such things. And then Fuzznuts spent 2 nights away from me. And it's the first time in 15 years or so that I've had this house to myself with no people or no cats in it. Boy, did this place feel empty. So I messaged her and I says, well, do you have, are any of those kittens black or tuxedo? Because, you know, black cats and tuxedo cats are my favorite. 2 of the best cats I've had have been either, one was black, the other one was a tuxedo. Tuxedo, of course, being Houdini. The black one was was the second cat I had, and I got her from the pound, and her name was Kitten. And she would get in my lap and take her paws, wrap them around my glasses, and pull them down so she could look into my eyes. She was a sweet, sweet cat, and unfortunately she died of feline leukemia. And so my friend messages me back and says, well, I've got a black one with a bobtail and a tuxedo. And I'm like, well, you know, all black cats kind of look alike at that age. So send me a picture of the tuxedo cat. She sends me the tuxedo cat. And, you know, of course it's a little kitten, so it's cute as fuck. But the markings on it that I can see are identical to Houdini's. And I'm just like, okay, fuck it. I'm taking it. You let me have it. So she's like, okay, it'll be old enough in about a week or 2. And she's going to be kind enough to bring the kitten here, since she lives in the neighboring town and I don't have a car. And she thinks the cat is female, which, you know, is a good thing, because Buttons was the only cat Fuzznuts ever liked. So, and I don't know if it was because I got her when she was such a tiny kitten, or if it was because she was female. I mean, even the feral females that would stick their nose in the door, he hated, and they were all kind of grown up. So I think it was the fact that Buttons was a kitten that he took to her. So I'm hoping he'll take to this one and he'll feel better, because he is definitely upset. I mean, he is upset. He is, though feeling better, he is, you know, he's purring loudly, which is unusual for him. And, you know, he is incessantly demanding my attention. Now, as for the kitten, I'm trying to think of names for her. And the thing I noticed when I went to the vet's office this time is that all the staff, except for the one receptionist, and the one receptionist is a woman who's probably in her 60s. She's definitely a devout Catholic. She was the one who checked me in when I brought Houdini in on the day he died. And when she found out he died, she immediately made the signs of the cross and started, you know, I think she was doing the last rites or something. But she's the only one who would call Fuzznuts Fuzznuts. She'll laugh and faceplant on the desk when she says it, but she's the only one who does it. All the other people at the vet's office will call him Professor Fuzz. And I'm like, okay. So this kitten, her name has to be something that's going to trigger them like Fuzznuts does. And I'm trying to think of names, and if you've got any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. And I will put a picture of the kitten in the show notes so you can see what she looks like, assuming it is a she. You know, it's young, so it can't really tell. But so the name I've come up with so far, and you know, I'm open to better ones, is Dame Titswiddle Broadchest. that, that kind of matches the dignified nature of her coloration and, well, call her Titswiddle for short. I think that'll get them going at the vet's office. But like I said, if you've got something that's comparable or better, I'd love to hear it because, it's just like, really, you're not going to call him Fuzz Nuts? And I make a point when we're talking about him. They'll say, well, and Professor Fuzz. And I'm like, yeah, Fuzz Nuts. What about him? Like, no, his name is Fuzz Nuts, not Professor Fuzz. It's Fuzz Nuts. So, there is that. Now, one thing that he has been doing since he got home, and, I am not happy about it, but I'm not upset, and I'm not yelling and screaming at him about it, is he's been pissing everywhere. He uses his litter box, but he's, he's pissing all over the place, and I'm going to clean that up. So that's no fun, but I'm not going to complain. I almost lost the little guy, so I, let him be. And he was, when I got him home from the vet and I opened the cat carrier, he shot out of that thing like a rocket and ran around the house. I mean, just in seconds. And I don't know if he was making a loop to try and spot buttons then, or if he was just so relieved to be out of the cat carrier. I mean, I've got a big cat carrier for him. It's actually, they have various sizes of cat carriers, and then they have they have dog carriers. And I got one for a medium-sized dog. So, and I did that because, at the time I had another cat I had a couple of cats, and I could put they got along, so I could put them both in the cat carrier at the same time when I took them to the vet, rather than having to carry two of them. And it was, that was better than anything. And I also figured if I take just one of them to the vet, they have more room to be in there. So, he was probably uncomfortable from having been in that thing for who knows how long, and but at least he was more comfortable than he would have been if I had one that was sized for a cat, and so it's barely any bigger than he is. And he's not completely out of the woods yet. I got to give him antibiotics for the next 2 weeks, and then he's got to go back to get a checkup to make sure that he's okay. And in that time, I want to keep the kitten away from him, both because I don't want her to get whatever he's got, because she probably doesn't have much of an immune system, and because if she's got something, I don't want him to catch it, since his immune system is suppressed slightly due to the antibiotics, and he's due to have his vaccines updated. And the one thing I have learned that that will help in the future is that when he starts getting on top of like the kitchen cabinets, because that's what he was doing, he started doing like a week or two before this, there's something wrong with him, and I need to get him to the vet right away. I thought he may have been a little upset, it might be having some problems when he started doing that, but I wasn't sure, because, he's a cat. They're fucking weird. But, and he had done that, he's done that in the past, and one time he did it, he was sick. I found out when I took him to the vet to get vaccinated that time. For some reason, I took him to the vet, and they said, yeah, he's got some tummy troubles, and at that time, he'd been up, running around on the top of the cabinets all the time, so. From now on, when he starts getting up there, I'm going to call and get him to the vet right away, rather than thinking I'll wait when it's convenient for me. So, hopefully they can catch, if he's got something, they can catch it early and get it treated, and it won't cost me quite so much money. But, like I said, I was really surprised at how cheap it was. I mean, not that $465 is cheap, but again, I was expecting $1,000. Because in the past, when they've ran tests on him, each test has been $100. This time, the set of tests they ran, the combined price was just over $100, and they didn't charge me for keeping him overnight. The big expenses were the antibiotics and a couple other things, so I'm not complaining at all. He's alive. He's healthy. He's not entirely happy with me, but he'll forgive me. Just wish he would settle down so I could think while I'm trying to record this episode. Okay, in other me-related news, they shifted me over to my new department this past week. I will have a more consistent work schedule for this, so I will be able to do I will be able to hopefully get the episodes out on a more regular basis. The big difference between my work schedule between the two departments is, in the one, I was working Sunday through Thursday, but I never knew how many hours a day I would be working. I mean, I would come in thinking I was only going to put in like a 6-hour day and end up being there for 12 hours, or I'd come in expecting to put in a 12-hour day and only put in about 6 hours. This department, I will be working Monday through Friday, and I will most likely just be getting 8 hours. There are certainly going to be times when I will be putting in more than 8 hours and working more than just, 5 days. But most of the time, I will be doing 8 hours or very near 8 hours. So that will make it a lot easier for me to, work out my schedule and be able to do the podcast on a regular basis. Because that was just one of the problems I had. I never knew what I was going to be working. And, no matter how well I tried to plan, it never, there would always be some issues, it seemed like, with how things went at work. In other news, I think I've hit on an idea for an atheist podcast, which fits a niche nobody's doing right now. Part of the beauty of the idea is that it can be structured in such a way that it's not immediately obvious that the hosts are atheists. So it's likely to sucker Christians into listening to it. And when Christians do figure out that it's a bunch of atheists doing the podcast, many of them will still want to keep listening because they'll be convinced that sooner or later we'll all find God. The nature of the show is also such that even if we put out episodes every week, we won't have to record every week. We can do marathon recording sessions where we bang out a bunch of episodes all at once. We could also do the show monthly. The show wouldn't have to have the same exact set of hosts each week either. Folks could rotate in and out at their convenience, so no biggie if somebody can't do an episode for 1 week or something. There are, of course, some downsides to this idea. One is that everybody will have to do some prep work for the episodes, so nobody can just show up and wing it. Some of the prep work can be spread around, so it's not like we'll all be digging for hours upon hours in the same material, though there will be some overlap. Additionally, there will be some costs associated with doing the show besides the usual hosting fees, but there's ways of keeping them down to about $20 or less a month per person. And if we got enough supporters via something like Patreon, those costs wouldn't be an issue. I don't want to say too much more, lest I give my idea away. But it's certainly not something I can do solo, because of the nature of the subject. It needs to have, at least one other person. If anybody's interested in getting into podcasting, but doesn't have any ideas about what to do, or would rather be like a co-host than the main person, contact me and I'll give you the details. And if you're interested, we'll go from there. I have put out the call on in an atheist podcasters group that I'm in, but really the number of hosts does not matter provided it's more than one. So if there's like 7 of us, you know, we wouldn't necessarily all be on every episode, but it would be you know, that would give us a good rotation. So somebody could say, hey, I'll take, you know, I'll do, you know, episodes this or that, you know, I'll do 3 episodes, then I'm going to take a break for a while, and somebody else can jump in and do 3 episodes, things like that. And this would not be a podcast which would be long running. It would actually have a set end, probably no more than 100 episodes at the most. Maybe not even that. It all just depends. I've got to do a little research on the subject matter to figure it out. And each episode, you know, would be about an hour's in length. You know, it would obviously depend, because some subject matter would certainly demand longer than an hour. Some would demand less than an hour. But I think it would have a broad appeal in the atheist community, as well as, you know, like I said, suckering a lot of Christians into listening to it. And nobody, so far as I know, in the atheist community is doing anything like this. You know, the amount of prep work somebody would have to do for an episode would vary depending upon certain factors. But at a minimum, it would be 3 hours an episode. Some episodes I know for a fact you would have to do more than that for reasons which I don't want to get into because they'll give away the idea. And others of them will be, you know, will just be 3 hours. But it won't. I'm trying to think of a good way to put this without coming out and saying what the idea would be. But it is something which, you know, it will be informative and educational for, you know, everybody, you know, involved, as well as all the listeners. And like I said, it's an area that nobody, as far as I know, in the atheist community is doing a podcast about. And, you know, it will have broad appeal, I do believe. And it certainly, you know, it'll even get people who aren't necessarily, who are, you know, agnostic or spiritual, or, you know, something like that. Again, I'm being vague so I don't give away the idea so nobody jumps on it and steals it from me. But like I said, if you're at all interested, drop me an email and we'll discuss things. Oh, and if you're wondering what kind of equipment you would need to be able to do this, I can, just email me for a specific hardware. Really, all you would need is, I don't know the model number, I'd have to pull it up, and I'm not going to do that right now. But really, all you'd need is, there's a Logitech headset with a built-in microphone that has decent sound quality, and it's maybe $30. That would be the only equipment you have. If you have a, you know, if you've got something comparable or even slightly better, that's perfect. You wouldn't have to get anything. And Skype. I'm not going to deal with trying to figure out how to record the audio using something different than what I'm doing now. Though there is a guy who has expressed interest in being one of the co-hosts, and I don't know if he'll do it or not. I haven't heard back from him since I've told him what it's going to be. He's a professional audio engineer, and he loves doing the back end stuff. So if he says, hey, I want to be on the show and I will handle all the technical stuff, which I would love, because he's so much better than I am, then, we may not be using Skype. We would be using whatever he wanted to use because, he's doing the work, so I'll let him handle it. But I don't know if he's going to sign on or not. And we would have to, it wouldn't be you agree to do it and then we start doing it the following week or anything like that. We would have to, coordinate some things, and there would be probably a month, where we'd have time that we would just say, okay, this is what my schedule looks like. This is when I can record. This is when I can do the research, things like that. We'd spend some time setting it up, and we'd actually, do it, try to do it as professionally as we could. That way there's no, you're not jumping into this thing and, we can sound kind of professional right out of the gate. Unlike me right now, but I think you can understand. I have had, a rough week with everything, and that's thrown me off. And then being swapped around departments, which they didn't tell me that they were going to do it this week. They, in fact, never said when they were going to do it. I just came to work one night, and they're like, "Oh, you work in sanitation now." Okay, and that changed, my day, not only days I work, but the times I work. I have to go in an hour early, but I get off an hour early. So that threw me off. And I was also supposed to have a 3-day weekend, but they changed their mind on that for some odd reason. I don't know what. Maybe it was because I missed Tuesday or Monday night. I don't know. They didn't say. They just came up to me one day, or the day they moved me into the department. They said, okay, and this was like Tuesday or Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't remember which. And they came up to me and they said, you're gonna, this week, since you came in on Sunday, take Friday night off and come back to work on Monday. And then on Thursday night, they came up to me and said, okay, we need you here tomorrow night. And, well, so, that threw me off because I had planned to take care of a bunch of stuff and I didn't get to it. And then we had a Democratic event on Saturday that I went to. It was it was the Donuts with the Democrat thing. And one of the candidates for office was there. Not one of the major ones, but one of the local ones. And she was there with her campaign manager. And he's a savvy guy. He's retired. And he moved here from Florida, and he ran a bunch of like 50 campaigns, he said, in Florida. He's a really savvy guy. I think he's got some good ideas for how to do her campaign because she's fighting uphill all the way. And she doesn't have the money that her opponent does. She doesn't have the name recognition that her opponent does. And she's a Democrat in a hugely red area. But, like I said, he's got, I think, some really good ideas about how to handle her campaign. And so one of the things that I've been doing when I've got a little extra cash is I've been buying copies of Eric Hoffer's The True Believer, since it is so insightful when it comes to understanding Trump's success. And, my plan has been whenever I'm at one of these events and there's a, candidate for office, I don't care what level they're at, I'm giving them a copy of the book and asking them to read it and explaining to them why I think they need to read it. So, that we have a better shot of switching this election, turnout. So, he was the first one I saw that I could give it to, so I gave it to him. He seemed interested. He said he did have a lot of stuff on his plate, so he didn't know if he'd get to read it, but, at least I made the effort. And I'm going to continue to do that every chance I get. I really want to catch Mara Lee and give her a copy of it, as well as Mayor Dean, who is running for governor, because Mara Lee's running for Diane Black's seat in the House. Diane Black is running for governor, which is going to be a nightmare if she wins. And Dean is running for governor. If I can get the book to them and, they or somebody on their campaign actually reads it and and they win, maybe I can take a little credit for that. Certainly, I think that if Mara Lee wins, I'm going to have a little better access to her than I would anybody else, because at every event I've been at where she's been there, she's made sure to come up and talk to me. She knows me by name. So I must have made a good impression on her the first time I met her, and I told her about the book and the podcast, My History Can Beat Up Your Politics. Because she made sure to tell me that she'd listened to that podcast and loved it. So I think we're, I don't know what the odds of her winning are, but I think I may have, gotten a little influence, and maybe I can shift things in certain areas. I don't know. But as I've said in the past, if this, I'm following the philosophy that the folks who did the Apollo program did. If this thing fails, it won't be because of me. If Democrats in this area don't win, it won't be because I did nothing. I did something. I did more than just show up and vote. I tried to help the people running for office as early as I could so that, they have a fighting chance. Because, well, I'm sure you've seen the whole nightmare that's going on at the border where they're ripping kids from their parents. Because, we've got to change this shit. We are pushing towards a very dark direction in this country. And, even if wonder of wonders, everything flipped tomorrow and, we got overwhelming control of things by the Democrats, we still have a very long road to go. One of the things I'm going to talk to Mara Lee about the next time I see her, which hopefully will be soon, is just tell her that, the most important thing that she can do is support any funding increases for the sciences and education in this country, because we've got, that's the only way we're going to make up for the lost time, is if we start throwing huge piles of money at things like that. Okay, I apologize for the shortness in the episode, but I think you guys can understand what I've been going through this past week. I have to get off here. I've got to cut the grass and then get to bed, because it's 9 o'clock in the morning and I have to work tonight and I cannot afford to lay out another day. I'm not sure what the next episode will almost certainly be the Rastafarian Apocrypha. I'm short the total number of episodes that I normally would have out at this point. I'm going to just to give the Patreon listeners a heads up, I'm going to be putting out an episode at some point this month, so it will bring it up, the number of paid episodes up to what it normally would be, rather than being one low, because I do need the cash, guys. I think you can understand, and your individual costs won't be any higher than they would be in a normal month. So, I'm not asking you to make a sacrifice you don't want to make. As I said, I know what it's like to be living on the margins, and I'm not going to put somebody out because I don't know what anybody's finances are. So I'm not going to, stick out an extra paid episode a month, but I am going to make sure that this month that you guys get, you get the full what would it be? I think the way it'll work this month, it would be 4. I don't know. The average weeks in a month are 4.5. So some months there'd be 5 episodes in a month, and some months there'd only be 4, maybe 3. But this month I absolutely have to, because he was so expensive. Even if he was a bargain, if I don't hit the full slate of episodes this month, then my Patreon earnings will be less than $100. If I hit the full slate of what it would normally be for this month, they'll be just over $100, and that will help. I mean, I had to drain, I had started building back money up to save for a car, and then this hit, and I had to pull all that down to take care of it, along with my overtime. So, it is what it is, and I'm not going to complain, because he is worth it. He is a sweet little guy, even if he does piss all over the place. And I'm sure a number of you out there would not be listening if it weren't for him. So, I'm not gonna lose him before I have to, if I can help it. Yeah, my buddy. No, you don't care. You're just getting scritchels and you're happy. All right. So, I will talk to you guys soon. And again, I apologize for this episode being a little rambling and him banging into the mic, but there's just no way for that to be helped, as I'm sure you can understand.
That's it for this episode of The Atheist in the Trailer Park Podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, as well as just about anywhere else podcasts can be found. Many of the episodes are also on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter. @TParkAtheist is the show's Twitter handle. It's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can support it via Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker. Thanks for listening.
Say goodnight, Fuzz-Nuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.